Ahoy there! We've got the big bad wolf of modelling out of the way thanks to yours truly, Rainhet the First, daughter of Satan, eater of souls. I like to hope that we can have a short break of shorter videos for a little while for both of our sakes, but there's definitely one thing that'll have to stay the same length. The basics of rigging in Blender. Let's be honest, most people take one look at weight painting and think, this looks like what happens when a drunk unicorn stands on a train track and an unfortunate passerby happens to be a little too close after the resulting collision. I promise you, once you get to understand certain repeated patterns and recognize them, what was once a pothole in the road will turn into more of a small pebble you can just pick up and throw to the side. Recognizing that you can use auto-rig services if you wish to, but there's nothing more valuable than knowing how to make something work from the ground up, especially so you can fix things when they go wrong. There are a lot of hiccups when using auto-rig, especially when clothes and accessories are involved. Eventually, you'll notice that auto-rig will start to slow you down, and you'll end up spending longer and longer perfecting whatever tolerable mess auto-rig gave you. I'm going to teach you the useful stuff, as 3D AI isn't that great as of now. So if you want to mess around with auto-rig, you'll have to do that without me holding your hand. Welcome to Blender. I've been going back and forth on whether I should be doing texturing first or rigging first. Now when push comes to shove, one of the best things that you can do before texturing is have the final mesh. And one of the best things that you can do during rigging is to be able to edit your mesh. And also have mirror modifiers on and such. So we'll be doing rigging first. It just makes more sense. This is going to be a little different. We're not going to be working on the model in this video, since this is the basic of the basics. I want to go through everything with you, but on a very simple shape, not on the whole body just yet. That'll be for the next video. So I want you to not worry about these for a while. They're just going to be examples. Now that I have screencast keys on, let's try again. Let's add a mesh and cube. We want to, for now, we'll start at 0, 0, 0. But we want to bring this forward a little bit and up as well. So let's do Z1. Bring the bottom to that point. And we'll leave it like that for now. Let's control A and apply all transformations on that one. So this cube, let's just go into edit mode. We're going to scale and then Shift Z, which should scale on the Y and the X axis and not on the Z axis. This will allow us to keep the height and, shorten how fat it is, if you want to call it that. Let's go back into object mode. You want to bring this forward so it's not in the way of these. You won't have anything for it to be in the way of, so you technically don't have to worry so much about that. Let's put this at 2 meters. Oh, okay. We'll do it at... Let me numpad 1. Yeah, it's behind. -2 meters then. -2 meters. Because I just want it to be in front. And this is the front. Let me hide these armatures since they're always going to be visible. And we'll be working with this. I want you to follow along with me this time. So we're going to go into edit mode, and we're first going to do this precise thing. Control R, so we can loop cut. And we want to put 2 loop cuts. And we want to scale them S in the Z axis, like this. Now we go back to object mode. This is going to be our, you know what, let's call it body. This is going to be our body. Because we usually call things body when it comes to avatars. We're going to add, let's look at the front view, add armature, single bone. I want to make sure this is in the right spot. So it's 0, -2, or it'll probably be 0 for you if you're not, you know, putting it in front, and then 0 for this as well. Now this bone is inside that cube, well, not cube, cuboid, there we go. We can click on this armature, and we want to go to this little, let's go to the object data properties button. It's a little green man. It's a little green man. This one right here, I hope you can see. So click on that and we'll drop down this menu, viewport display. We must make sure we have this armature selected, and click in front. Now, regardless of where you're looking, you'll always see the bone inside the mesh, because, you know, you want to be able to see it. These are some things that are useful, like the names and the axes. These are very useful for Vrchat models, but we will not be messing with that in this video. So as of right now, if we hide this and check the different viewports, it's a solid bone. It looks like a bit of mesh. You can leave it like that if you want, or you can go to Object Properties and Viewport Display, and we'll display as wire. So it will always be see-through. Of course, if you don't want it to, you could display as other things. Solid, textured, bounds, which would just be a straight line. I don't like working with that because you can't see the head and tail. So we'll leave it at wire. It's good to be able to see the head, which is the fat part, and the tail of the bone. Right, let's go to edit mode, but turn the body back on. Make sure you've got your armature selected, edit mode, A. Let's R, X, 180. Rotate in the X axis 180 degrees. Now the head is on top, the tail is on the bottom. G, Z, let's just put 1. It'll go up 1 meter. We can E to extrude, Z, -1 to extrude down 1 meter. No, that's at the bottom, that's at the top. When you're actually rigging, it's not that important if it's perfectly where you need it to be. It just needs to be generally where you need it to be. Now we've got the bones in the right place, we need to name them. So how you name the bones is you go into, well, you first select with whatever your select is. Mine is right click, yours might be left. Go into bone properties and we give this a name. Now what I like doing, which is not a good thing to do, is go into object data properties instead and rename this. This is the armature, you don't want to name that. Armatures should be called armature. Now let's click on bone properties and name the bone. We'll just name it bone top. Now the thing with Unity and Blender 2, to be honest, they don't like spaces very much. So you can name it this and be fine, but when you are moving around your files, it might automatically put an underscore there or something, or a full stop. But I recommend just either not using spaces or using underscores. I'm going to get rid of the space and just put another capital letter. Over here we'll name this bone bottom, or bone bottom without the space. This one, remember to press enter, otherwise it won't save. Great, now we have an armature and a mesh that we can work with here and here. Let's click on the body and then control and click on the armature. So now the armature will be a lighter color than the body. We'll control and P and then armature deform. What that does is not only moves the body into the armature hierarchy, but if you click on body and go to modify properties, you'll see that it adds an armature modifier, and this will be connected to the armature. Now we have a body that can be affected by these bones. We'll click on the armature and then control click on the body and then weight paint. Let's go to wireframe mode, this one up here, so we can see what we're working on. We want to have our brush. Let's set the strength to 1, make sure the weight is also to 1, and make sure none of these are selected. So do not click on paint mask, do not click on vertex selection, we don't want that right now. Let's go to brush and let's not check front faces only, so take that off. Let's go to fall off and let's change it to projected. And also you want to make sure the blend is on add. This is so when we paint at the front, it will go all the way through to the back. Now I'll show you what happens when we don't do that. Let's change it back to the original settings. Let's paint at the front and it won't go through to the back. So undo, 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 undo. Okay, I don't know how far back I went, but let's go back to weight paint mode. You should be able to click select. Mine is right click, yours might be left or right if you're intelligent. You can now select the bones because you've selected in the right order. You can select the bones and you can paint through, so make sure your settings are correct. You can paint through and you now have a red section for that bone and a red section for this bone. And it's all painted through. Now notice that I only painted this line and not this line for a very specific reason. I want to show you how this bends. So we're now in like side view, numpad 3. We can R to rotate. Now look what happens when this goes over. Everything moves from the bottom, but this doesn't move at all. So when they collide with each other, they start folding over. And it'll look slightly different depending on where the pivot point is of this bone. See, the collapsing point is right there at the moment. We can change the collapsing point. So let's try to change it. Let's go to object mode, click on the armature, go to edit mode, and we'll grab it and put it up here. This, because we're in side view, it will only go in the Y direction. So now the pivot point is that point up here. Not perfect, but close enough. Go to object mode. We can actually, because we've already weight painted it, we can go straight into pose mode. So how you do that is you click on your armature and then up here go to pose mode. Look how different this bends now. It doesn't collapse in the center, but it goes all the way out. Let's go to show overlays and turn that off for a moment. So very different in the way that it moves. Sometimes you will move your bones around and try to get this to act in a certain way and it won't. You might have to change the mesh to allow you to get the shapes and the movement that you want. Also, if things are too angular and you want them to be softer, you might need to add more topology so things move more rounded. Oh, another important point. Let's go back into pose mode. Let's A to select all of the bones. We'll go to pose here and clear transform all. Another thing that I like doing, going to object mode. Cats can be a little weird with the armature numbers, but we'll try to do that. Make sure this is set to the correct armature, and it should be armature number 5 that we have right here. It should be the same, and if we click start pose mode, there we go. RX, we can rotate however much we need to. And then we can stop pose mode with the click of a button. Very simple, very easy. If you don't have Cat's Blender plugin, shame on you. I told you to download this in the first video. Why haven't you done it? Let's hide these. Let's look at the examples that we have. I want to show you what can be done about different shapes and how they react to having a bone in the center. Remember, be rotating from the center. Let's start with number 1. Everything is straight across. I tend to not do this kind of thing because there's a lot of topology that is typically not necessary. Let's just go straight into pose mode with this one. Let's hide this for a moment. Or I could just use cats. Let's use cats. So gotta go to 0.3 because you know it says right there 0.3. Let's go to start pose mode. Look at how this bends. RX. You'll see that adding the extra topology, making the bends closer to each other, the collapse isn't as drastic as it was in the other shape. If we stop pose mode and go to weight paint mode, let me show you how to do that again. So we click on the armature. Click on the armature and then control and click on the mesh. Let's go to weight paint. We'll see that the weight paint does not go past this line. The red stops there and then it goes straight to blue. This is as blue as you get, this is as red as you get, and everything in between is always a gradient. These are all the same. If we start blurring this further up, and this is going through, so just making sure the blur isn't one-sided. If we start blurring stuff up, things start to change. Let's do this and pose at the same time so you can see what I'm talking about. So RX, I want you to see what happens when I start adding more. This starts going the opposite way of the rotation. This is a rotation point and it starts moving to the right. You can see it moving. You can see this moving too. What was once an L shape is now becoming a C shape. Same with here. It'll start moving. Instead of going up, it's going down. It's becoming more and more curved. Take advantage of this. If we go to tools, there is a tool that I don't like using, auto normalize. Ensure all bone deforming vertex group add up to 1 while weight painting. The reason I hate this is a gradient, right? And this is a gradient, but they're not a perfect gradient. Auto normalize will force it to be perfect. For example, let's put this strength up to, let's just do this. We'll move this up here. So this is not quite 100% red, but it's very red. And we'll turn on auto normalize. We'll try to put red here. And I'll show you what happens here. All the red that we put up here is gone because auto normalize realized that it didn't add up to 1 and it took it away. If you turn this off, you never have to deal with that. So I highly recommend you turn it off. And the auto normalize won't be forced upon you, but calculated after. For example, if there are 2 reds, instead of taking away from the other, it'll just 50-50 them, for example. Okay, let's not play with auto normalize. We don't like that. We don't like auto normalize here. Let's turn off the pose mode, stop pose mode, and we'll look at the other shape. So let's hide this. This is now the elbow. Let's do 0.2. We'll start pose mode. Now you can view this deform. Let's view it in this mode. RX. Can you see how this is being pushed in and this is keeping a sharp point? This is what I did for the elbow. I want you to be aware that this is going to go inwards. So this is going to start making this kind of angle. The only way to stop that from happening is to have loops here that are weight painted to the, the top and bottom bone to give it more fattiness, I guess. So let's do that. Go to edit mode. Let's get out of that. I'm gonna grab this and grab this SZ. I'm gonna bring these down and I want to show you the difference it makes with the rigging. SZ. This would be the new elbow shape. It obviously wouldn't look this bad. Let's do pose mode again. RX. Can you see now how this keeps its shapes better and that keeps its shapes better? But it still has the point at the end here. That's what that shape does. This triangle shape, RX. It's basically the same shape we had in the tutorial video for the body. You merge these sides and then add another, so it's, less of a triangle. Let's stop pose mode and hide these. This is the knee shape that we have. And I also want to say that there's no excessive blending on any of these models up to a certain point. These are very heavily blended, and I want to show you how squishy they are. Now we have this model. Let's go to Armature 4. Let's turn that mode on and start pose mode. RX. This is the knee that we made. Remember how I squished the back and kept the front quite full and round? You'll see how this deforms. It's similar to what we did with the elbow, but just different shape. Now this point area is not pointy at all. It is more round because it has more points to not be pointy. Since it's not blurred, you'll see that this middle line is more biased towards pointing downwards. I'm pretty sure this middle line is both rigged red to the top and bottom bone, but this is the kind of thing that happens. This is a nice leg rig kind of shape. Let me see if I can show you with weight paint. Let's turn this back on. Overlays. Look, the red doesn't go below that line, it just covers that knee and here. I also want to point out something. Look at the shape of these. Look at the shape of these. This is angled this way, and this is angled this way. What that means is Blender has decided that it's going to make a triangle. Let me point this towards here. Let me hide this for a moment. Blender has decided this. This is going to be a triangle, and this is going to be a triangle. Because these programs work with triangles. We don't want to work with triangles, but they do. This is not symmetrical. What you can do is you can force it to act the way you want it to, or you can just hope things work out better in Unity. The only way to force it, if we stop pose mode, is to manually add the triangle. So let's do that. Let's K, do this, do this. Right, then we can go to object mode, edit mode, weight paint mode, and you'll see it's now following a lot better. They're now symmetrical. Well, wow, as symmetrical as this is. I didn't have a mirror modifier on. This is what I mean by editing the mesh. You might find yourself doing that with certain things, right? See these squishy shapes. Number 4 and number 5. This is Armature, so this is the original one. Let's start pose mode. This is the same as the one before. This is the same as number 3. But subdivided. It's exactly the same except subdivided. Rx. You'll see how much is moving here. Is it worth? Yes. Okay, Rx. You'll see that the top is moving, the middle is moving, the knee is being able to squish. This is a lot more blended than the rest of it. You'll see how much rounder it is. If you hold your knee, most of it is below when there's a bend. Most of it is below. So you'd want to pay attention to that. Let's have a look at the weight paint for a moment. See, it blurs all the way up. And a little bit here. Not drastically, but enough to notice. And it blurs all the way here as well. Blurring is very simple. You just take your blur, go wild with it. Go wild with it. You can see the less control you have of these areas, the less sharp the bends is. But it's useful to have a bit more topology here, so it's not as extreme. But the more we add, the more it goes forward. Like I said before. Let's stop pose mode now that I've ruined this. And here is number 5. This is Armature 01. You'll see that this shape is just a lot of topology. There's no thought gone into it. There's no shape gone into it. It's just, there's a bend, so I'm going to throw a bunch of topology in there. And all you get is this squishy mess. Of course, you can pay a lot more attention and try to make a shape with weight painting, but why not make weight painting easier with less points? I can't think of anything this is good for except for a bendy straw. Let's revert file, revert. I hope, because now we don't have an armature on this, I hope you learned how to add a shape, connect that to a armature after you're adding the armature, and weight painting. I hope you were able to recognize that red means attach this bit of mesh to this specific bone. And I hope I can make this video shorter somehow, because it's half an hour. Oh dear. Alright. See you in the next video where we add an armature to an actual body. And this file will be available on Patreon, so you can mess with it. If you want to see more of my evil shenanigans, follow me on twitch.tv/Rainhet. You're guaranteed that I consider streaming at least twice a week. Maybe you'll be lucky and witness a sacrifice or two. You can also follow updates on Twitter and join the Gremlins on Discord. Remember to like, subscribe, support artists and creators, and tell your mom you love her. Because if you don't, I will, and then we'll fall in love, and then I'll put you up for adoption. Which you don't want, right? This series is brought to you by my Patreons, with special thanks to my Grey Clouds and Grey Skies, Eeyore HeeHaw, Silent K, Sowwatt, and Spud the Cat. See you in the next class. Farewell!